Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, Pakistan's religious minorities are some of the country's most vulnerable citizens. We look at the prejudice and violence they face and what, if anything, their government is doing to help. The sad truth is, if you look any day, any week, any part of the year in Pakistan, there will be sectarian violence on one of the minority communities, right, Malika Bilal?
Right.
Digital producer.
Why we get so many pitches for us to cover the state of minorities in Pakistan. No,
Sure.
we also got several video comments for today's show in particular.
Right.
I'm going to play one thought from Fahim Yunus.
After decades of hard work, my sister built her dream home in Lahore only to find worthy of death stickers pasted on their front door, only to find hang these Ahmadis written on the walls. And then she had to rent out her own home and go in hiding in the same city till they could move out of the country. And the country still remains in denial. They still believe they're treating their minorities well. This is the story of Ahmadis in Pakistan.
Strong words there from Fahim, but of course we want to hear from all of you at home. So join the conversation with #AJStream.
Joining us in the studio, we have Qasim Rashid, and Qasim is the spokesperson for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the US, and he's also the author of The Wrong Kind of Muslim, an untold story of persecution and perseverance. Qasim, it's great to have you here in the stream.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're going to hear so much more from you in just a moment,
Sure.
right? Okay, stay tuned.
I'm Joseph Dana, and I'm a journalist writing about Palestinians, Israeli occupation, and hummus in the West Bank, and I'm in the stream.
In Pakistan, religious freedom for all is guaranteed by the constitution. The flag was designed to symbolize Pakistan's commitment to Islam and the rights of religious minorities who are represented by the white strip. Now, despite this, minority communities, which include Shia, Muslims, Christians, Ahmadis, Sikhs and Hindus, have become some of the country's most vulnerable groups. They're regularly subjected to targeted sectarian violence, bombings, forced conversions and accusations of breaking Pakistan's blasphemy laws. The new government says that it's concerned about these communities and has promised on many occasions to protect them. But many say that Islamabad is all talk and no action. So what's standing in the way of protecting Pakistan's religious minorities? To help us talk about this, we're also joined by Ali Dian Hassan. He's Director of Human Rights Watch Pakistan. Salim Javid is a human rights activist, and we're hoping to be joined by Khalil Takia Sindhu. He's Minister of Human Rights and Minority Affairs in Punjab State. He had confirmed that he was going to join in this program, but so far we haven't heard from him yet. He hasn't turned up in our studio, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed that he will be part of our conversation at some point today. So I want to start on my laptop here. This is the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Back in August of 1947, he says, "You are free. You're free to go to your temples, you're free to go to your mosques or any other places of worship. You may belong to any religion or caste or creed that has nothing to do with the business of the state." What a fantastic way to launch the state of Pakistan. Qasim, give me an update. What's the daily life like?
I'm so glad you started with that, because Ahmadi Muslims were pivotal in the creation of Pakistan. And just for our viewers who don't know what an Ahmadi Muslim is,
right.
Ahmadi Muslims are Muslims who believe in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. It is this dogmatic belief that has resulted in unprecedented persecution, police tortures, suicide bombings, and state-sanctioned persecution against the millions of Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan. A day in the life is very typical. You go out, you do not discuss your faith with anyone. If somebody asks you what your faith is, you do everything you can to avoid mentioning the word Ahmadi. Our women in Pakistan, for example, haven't attended Jummah in over 4 years, haven't attended Friday prayer in over 4 years because of the threat of suicide bombings. This is the reality for the average Ahmadi Muslim in Pakistan right now.
Qasim, I should also say that you're the author of The Wrong Kind of Muslim, which actually refers to the sect of Islam that you've come from.
Absolutely, and I wrote this to tell that story from a first-person narrative, to really take the story of people suffering in Pakistan, silenced under these blasphemy laws, and give them a voice that they unfortunately don't have right now.
And you call it the untold story of persecution and perseverance. Ali, you're living in Pakistan right now. Does that resonate with you, what Qasim is saying from here in DC?
Absolutely, it does. In terms of minorities, their persecution in Pakistan happens at multiple levels. And of course, the most obvious of them, and what targets Ahmadis, I think, in very, very specific ways, is legal discrimination. The fact is, and this is not just a question of Section 295C of the Criminal Procedure Code, otherwise known as the blasphemy law. There is Ordinance 20, which specifically targets MDs. Now, if you look at that law, it is the closest thing to an apartheid law that exists actually in the world.
So, Ali, unpack that law for us. What's actually in the law?
Well, Section 298 will tell you that an MD that poses as a Muslim. Now, of course, therein lies an essential conundrum, because the fact is that basically the law criminalizes MD public practice of faith, or even discussion of their faith, because the fact is that the law says MDs are not Muslims, and if at all they begin by saying that they're Muslims, that is punishable by a 3-year prison sentence. Now,
right.
If you are actually a non-MD, if I was to refer to an MD as a Muslim on television, I too could be sent to prison for 3 years. This is Pakistani law.
But is this actually happening, Ali? I mean, there's one thing written in law, and what we wanted to get to the heart of today is like, what is actually happening? Are people...
Certainly, there are dozens of cases every year. There are dozens of cases both under the blasphemy law and also under Section 298 against MDs.
We're getting lots of stories from our community as well, Malika.
We do, and one person picks up on something you mentioned, Qasim, about women being afraid to go to the mosque. I would like all of our guests to have listened to this video comment.
My friends rejoiced that the 28 May 2010 terrorist attacks on Ahmadi mosques was well deserved, and this is how we should be treated. The persecution of Ahmadis does not touch mainstream media, and the target killings continue. Ahmadis are not allowed to call their mosques as mosques. The situation has become so unstable that Ahmadi women cannot even attend Friday prayers at the mosques for the sake of their safety.
So Salim, that's one story, but of course we're hearing from other stories, people who aren't Ahmadi but are also minority. One person tweets in, the reality for religious minorities, Ahmadi Muslims are lynched, he says. Hindu girls are kidnapped to convert. Christian homes are arsoned. And then, as Sabri tweets in, under the nose of the Pakistani government, minorities like the Hazaras are targeted on a daily basis and in high security areas. Can you tell us what the situation is like for some of these other minorities, Hazaras in particular?
Well, let me first start with the beautiful quote of the Qaeda Muhammad Ali Jinnah that you just quoted in the beginning of the show, that the freedom of religion and the freedom of expression was so well crafted in the Constitution that, and also in his speech in the beginning, that everybody was so much happy to have a country like Pakistan, which was created for the Muslim minority of India to practice their religion freely, and also to allow other religions and other people to practice their beliefs very much freely. But the fact is that all those were buried with the Qaeda himself. Just in 1948, when he died, his funeral, because he was a Shia, his funeral was private. And this was the beginning of all these disasters that we are seeing today and that we were observing. And then in 1953, we observed that there was the rioting against the Ahmadi community, and which subsequently came and ended to the amendment in the Constitution of Pakistan. And then when you come to the other minorities, like to the Hazaras and the Shias across Pakistan, this has been very much catastrophic. Particularly the Hazara community in Pakistan, because they are limited to a particular area of Quetta, and all of them live in very dense area. And then because they have this Mongolite feature that whenever they go out here and then they are easily recognized and then attacked by the terrorist groups which are freely moving across Pakistan.
Now, I want to add on to one thing he said about the 1953 riots against the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. This is an important part in Pakistan's history because the government did the right thing. They saw the riots and they suppressed the terrorists who were causing these riots. The difference in 1974, when Pakistan passed a constitutional amendment declaring Ahmadis non-Muslim, is that the government supported the terrorists. And then in 1984 and 86, when the anti-blasphemy and anti-Ahmadi laws came into play, that was just a natural consequence. And so it's a question of leadership in Pakistan right now. there is a lack of strong, courageous leadership. We need more people like Ali Dan Hassan, we need more people like Salim to stand up as elected officials and say, hey, this is wrong. We must stand for a secular state that provides equality for all people. That leadership is what's lacking right now in Pakistan.
Ali?
Well, I think that I think we need to unpack this a little, because actually in Pakistan there are a series of fairly complicated things happening, all of which unfortunately result in the persecution of religious minorities or those designated the other by various forms of bigoted extremists. First, if you look at the Ahmadis, here you have a theological schism, and that theological schism results in legislating identity and the state assuming for itself the right to determine the faith of individual citizens. That is in itself a problematic thing, and it has then led to a history of legislating identity, defining the other through legal means. So, and persecution resulting from that. Second, you have a situation where there have been militant extremist groups, largely Sunni extremist groups, that have, in various points in history, been patronized by the state. And those groups have not just turned against the state, but turned inward and are now targeting Pakistanis, such as the Hazara. Third, you have historical caste prejudices buttressed by, again, things like Section 295C, which you see play out in the persecution of the Christian minority, where you will find, particularly in the Punjab, this widespread belief that these are people who are unclean. Now, there is nothing in Islam that suggests that. So there are a series of different things that are happening that are resulting in all of this. And the fact of the matter is, the underlying tragedy of all of this is that a country that was actually created to protect minorities, to give a religious minority freedom, is persecuting its various minorities in a multiplicity of ways.
Okay, Ali, take a breath. Kasim.
I agree with everything he said, and one thing I'll also point out is that there are some very simple things the Pakistani government can do right now. One, for example, regarding Ahmadi Muslims, is that we are the only demographic in Pakistan that is denied the right to vote. For us to vote, we must either sign a declaration declaring ourselves infidels or declaring the Messiah Mirza Ghulam Ahmad a non-Muslim.
That just solves one small issue for one of the minority communities.
It does, but what it allows us to do is have a voice in the political sphere. Now, the reason why we can't vote is because President Musharraf
But what about Shias? What about Hazars?
Well, that's what I mean, right? You have to start with the small stuff. And what I mean by small stuff...
Start with your community.
Well, no, I don't necessarily mean just with our community, because we speak for all minorities and try to fight for their rights as well. But the point I want to get across is that President Musharraf issued an executive order denying us the right to vote. If the leadership is serious about minority rights, it isn't difficult for Nawaz Sharif to issue another executive order giving us back the right to vote.
Okay, look, I'm just going to jump in here just for a moment, because we had invited Mr. Khalil Tahir Sindhu, and he is the minority minister for the state of Punjab. And what would have been really nice, because he also is a Christian, so he's a minority, but also he's trying to work out what do you do in a situation like Ali explained, like that 3-point plan that Ali talked about. He would have been able to help us out understand what at least the state is doing, and maybe how that applies to the federal situation. We don't have him. We asked him to be part of our program. We don't know where he is right now and why he hasn't turned up. So I just want you to know that he should have been part of this conversation, because this has been a good point for him to talk.
Right, exactly.
And I'm not a good proxy for him.
Especially because there is a lot of criticism online towards the government. People saying things like, Asad tweets in, the reality is that minorities fend for themselves in Pakistan. Another person has a suggestion for what he believes could happen. Al on Facebook says, Pakistan needs a government that is capable of overseeing all the Islamic madrasas, the religious schools, while deploying moderate, educated standards of clerics, he says. So Ali, I want to go to you with that, because is that a solution? Is this a more systemic, structural change that needs to happen? Something that happens in schools, something that happens on the society level, aside from just the government's role?
I think absolutely. And I think that there is certainly both an intellectual laziness and a failure to look at demons within, when people sort of try and argue that this is just a function of repealing laws, or this can be dealt with by having the political will. Now, the fact of the matter is that often, particularly elected governments that tend to be weaker in Pakistan in any case, don't have the political will. And I think the time has come for Pakistani society to accept the fact that however this may have happened, this process of legal discrimination and of legislating identity has led to a mainstreaming of bigotry in society.
Give us an example of that, Ali. Give us an example. So we go from the blasphemy law to mainstreaming prejudice and bigotry. Tell me a story that emphasizes that, or give us an example.
Sure, I can. I moved to the city of Lahore, and my landlord was a very high-powered bureaucrat, government official, not a politician, but a government official. And I was his tenant, and on the festival of Eid, as Muslims do, he sent me, some sweet things or something. And well, subsequently, the following Eid, as one does to keep up with the Joneses, I suggested to my wife that we should send him something. And when we spoke to our children's nanny, and who was also the cook, and we said, look, let's take some dessert across, she said, no, don't do that because they'll throw it away. And I said, why on earth would they throw it away? And she said, well, it's because I work for you and I'm Christian. And I had laughed, and I said, you've got to be kidding. And she said, no, why don't you do an experiment, invite them over and see they won't even drink a glass of water. And sure enough, I invited them over and they didn't even drink a glass of water. And now this is a highly educated, highly empowered person who works in government. So that should give you some idea of how widespread this kind of prejudice is.
Right.
And yes, the laws are enablers of persecution.
Sure.
But social bigotry needs social, responses.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I'll give you another example. That's a fantastic example. We all were inspired recently by Aizaz Hassan, the teenage boy in Pakistan who stopped a suicide bomber with his own life and received all sorts of praise. It was all well-deserved.
Yeah.
A story that people have forgotten about or wouldn't report about was another young man named Muzaffar Ahmed. In the 2010 Lahore attacks, he stopped a suicide bomber, captured him alive, and handed him over to the police. The first time in Pakistan's history this ever happened. The result was that suicide bomber was released that evening for a lack of evidence. Muzaffar had to go into hiding and eventually flee Pakistan for his life because the government chose to side with the suicide bomber over an Ahmadi Muslim. So think about that. You have a government that thinks it's better public policy to side with a suicide bomber than be viewed as sympathetic to Ahmadi Muslims. So not only do you have the social bigotry that Ali Dayan Hassan talked about, it's stemming from a leadership that doesn't have the moral courage or turpitude to recognize that a suicide bomber is a murderer, and no individual of whatever faith or background they belong to deserves to live under this kind of discriminatory regime.
And of course, you also tweeted us that story in particular. I pulled it up here. Tweeted us in January, which is one of the reasons that we're doing today's show. Another person also tweeted in a story similar to what you just mentioned, Ali. Karashita says, my household staff refused to share crockery with a Christian colleague. Some people refuse to employ non-Muslim domestic help. But Salim, I want to address this next tweet to you. Sarah says the media should perhaps begin highlighting moments when religious communities do come together along with when they don't. Are there instances in your own experience where communities are coming together? I know that I've seen stories of people guarding religious institutions of another religion to help protect them for security. Do you have examples?
Allow me, please.
Give two examples which will...
Salim, just 1 second, sorry. I object to this kind of tweet, and I'll tell you why I object to this kind of tweet. It is because there is a standard apologist response in Pakistan. You say, oh, Shias are being killed. Someone responds and says, well, so are Sunnis. You say Hazaras are being killed. They say, well, so are non-Hazaras. You say Ahmadis are being killed. They say, well, so are other Muslims. That's not the point. Each life is real. Each life destroyed is a life destroyed. And this idea that, oh, well, when communities come together, yeah, sure, of course they come together. That's what's called society. That is what is society. And when communities keep coming together in a viable way, you have a state. So, no, I'm sorry, I don't think it deserves to be highlighted that people are behaving like normal civilized human beings. But it does deserve to be highlighted when they fail to do so.
Salim.
I think that Pakistani media has played two types of different roles. There has been a part of Pakistani media which has highlighted the events, the persecution which has been subjected to against the minority communities. But the fact is that at the same time, Pakistani media has been promoting sectarianism. It has been promoting this bigotry. It has been promoting this hatred against the minorities. I just want to give you an example that when the Punjab governor Shahid Salman Taseer was speaking on the behalf of Asia Bibi, a Christian who was against whom there was a blasphemy case. So it was Pakistani media, in fact, which highlighted the issue against the governor of Punjab, Shahid Salman Taseer, and finally he was killed by his own bodyguard.
Right.
And then the irony is there that when he died at the funeral of a very governor of the province, the high state officials was not present.
All right, so Salim, just finish up your point very quickly. We're running out of time, and I really want to get to this. To finish your sentence.
Yeah, they were not present there. So this shows that the media has actually played largely a negative role instead of a positive.
Okay, in the closing 3 minutes of our program, we have 3 guests, 3 minutes. Use your minutes wisely. So we have had instances where the Pakistani government have ministers who have looked out for maybe the blasphemy laws shouldn't be there, have looked out to revising that. That did not end well. There have been people who've spoken up against the violence against minorities. That has not ended well. So, gentlemen, in terms of what the administration is doing, where they should be looking right now? Ali, you start first.
Well, I mean, look, the point is that in Pakistan, there is a high level of public apologia that is presented by not just the media, but by politicians, the political class itself, about extremists and their values. So right now you have negotiations that are ostensibly occurring between the Taliban and the government, whereas actually these are negotiations that are occurring between one set of political leaders in Pakistan and another set of political leaders in Pakistan. Now, if you have that kind of license, mainstream license to extremism and the murder of your own citizens, you can't even begin.
All right.
So you need a change in that attitude to begin with.
Salim, you can't even live in Pakistan right now. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for a lot of your community. What do you need from your Pakistan government?
Well, this is very, very simple. We have, throughout last 1 decade, we have asked only one simple issue, that is protection. And this protection has not been given yet. And then we have received a lot of promises, and we have not been given this protection.
All right.
Unfortunately,
you just need protection. That's a very simple way to wrap up your conversation for now. We're going to take you to the post show, though. And Kasim, from you, I mean, this is something that you've actually been saying. I live in DC. We live in the diaspora. We can help. How do you help?
His Holiness the Khalifa of Islam, the head of the Ahmadi Muslim community, has asked all Ahmadi Muslims to continue to serve Pakistan because we want to serve our fellow human beings. I ask our fellow Muslims in Pakistan to speak up, have the courage to speak up and demand better leadership out of your your elected officials.
Right.
I call on Nawaz Sharif to repeal this ban on Ahmadis from voting. It's very simple. You know, after the May 20th Lahore attack, he called Ahmadis his brothers and sisters. If he's serious about that, take some action and allow us the right to vote and become equal citizens of Pakistan once again.
Malika, last word to the community.
I will give it to this person called Rafi on Twitter, who says there's hate in school books, hate in mosques, hate on TV, hate in the Constitution. We still ask why the hate in society, but there's an answer from Mina who says, long struggle indeed, but have to start at some point, better sooner than later.
So we have Kasim, we have Salim, and we have Ali. We are taking them to the post show. This is a conversation that can't be done in 30 minutes, and we're not even going to try. Stream.aljazeera.com to be continued. Meanwhile, on the next program, jailed journalists and accusations of a media clampdown. We'll look at the status and the state of press freedom in Egypt. Stay with us. We'll be in the post show online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Streams Online Post Show. We've been talking about religious minorities in Pakistan. Our guests are Kasim Rashid, Ali Dian Hassan and Salim Javed. It's really great to have you all here in the conversation. Is that not the fastest 30 minutes you've ever had in your life? It goes very quickly. It's been great having that conversation. We have a little bit more now online. Do you know what I'm really intrigued by is if you do speak up, if you do speak out, terrible things can happen to you. Ali, that makes it very difficult for the administration. Even if they had a will, the people die for speaking out against attacks against minorities.
Sure it does. But you know, I want to say something, and of course I'm Human Rights Watch's Pakistan director, but I say this as a Pakistani brought up as a Muslim. There's this whole idea that, which is frequently peddled, that we are actually all moderate Muslims, that we actually are moderate people. Now, the point is, if we are moderate people, then we must, in fact, speak up against bigotry, persecution, and, well, mass murder. Because if we don't, we are cowed and extraneous, and we are not moderate, we are complicit in murder and bigotry and persecution. And it's as simple as that.
Here's a situation that I heard about. A young Christian girl who's probably got learning difficulties was accused of blasphemy, and then every Christian in the neighborhood, their homes are burned and they have to run. How do those two things connect? How do you get from one child who's probably disturbed and needs some medical help to every single Christian in that area is now under attack? What is the mentality that makes that happen?
You're talking about Rimsha Masih.
Yeah.
She's now actually in Canada working with Peter Bhatti, and thankfully she's safe now.
Right.
But I think this is a reflection of when you have a country that's mixed mosque and state and has allowed religion to infiltrate and dictate public policy, and you have textbooks that demonize Christians, demonize Ahmadis, demonize Shias from the very beginning.
Can you give us an example? Because we've talked about this on the show before, and it's hard to understand that would be the case.
The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has put out an excellent report where they studied, I think, over 600 textbooks from the first grade all the way through college years. And you have statements in there saying Hindus are Satan's progeny, or Christians are evil, or Ahmadis are impure and must be killed. Now, when you're a 5-6-year-old child and you're being taught this, you don't know any better, and when it's ingrained year after year after year, and you have these anti-blasphemy laws supplementing that silence dissent, silent anyone who disagrees with you, suddenly you don't have the ability, I believe, to be able to differentiate between what's bigotry and what's justice.
Where did you grow up?
I was very fortunate that at a young age, about 5 or 6, we were able to move to the United States. I grew up in the United States.
Okay.
And so when I was faced with situations of discrimination, I had teachers, I had parents squash that discrimination.
Right.
In Pakistan, my own wife tells me situations where in the middle of class, the teacher is demonizing Ahmadi Muslims, knowing very well that she's an Ahmadi, and now the entire class is turning against her. So it doesn't become a surprise anymore that you have this mob mentality trying to kill this helpless little girl just because she's Christian. It's a depressing scenario. But as Ali said, to really rise above it, every person needs to take individual responsibility and recognize that until you can speak up and condemn this, you are complicit in the murders and tortures that are happening.
Well, Ali, the mob mentality that Qasim was just mentioning, our community says some of that comes from a policy of appeasement by the government. Umair tweets in saying that. Another person has thoughts on what the government should be doing. Amir says the fear of religious clerics is deeply rooted in society and no elected government has dared to confront them in any way. So I heard your passionate words earlier about this is complicity and murder, but when you have even Nawaz Sharif being threatened for saying something like, our brethren, speaking of the Ahmadiyya community, even he is threatened. How do you get out of that?
Well, look, the point is that it is absolutely essential to actually address this issue. And like I said, there are multiple issues that need to be addressed. And one of them is actually of social prejudice. Now, the problem, of course, with being in government, with any government, is that because it is both subject to the laws and it has to show an overt adherence to the law. The previous government, which had many people, individuals who took very brave stances, also ultimately failed to do anything about this. Nawaz Sharif, of course, even has a certain level of political, his political antecedents are connected with certain extreme Sunni philosophies. So there is a political sympathy as well. But that's not the point. The point is to understand and to explain in society that this is not about religion. It is about power. It is the use of religion for purposes of acquiring and seizing power, which is what clerics and, for example, the Taliban are doing. I will say one thing, please, and I think this is very important. This is not just about sporadic, isolated cases of discrimination or persecution or dozens of people. I want you to know that there are around 500,000 Hazaras in the city of Quetta. They live in conditions approximating the Warsaw Ghetto. It's a shame. It is a horror and a shame that a state allows this to happen and its people allow it to happen. And of course, the government has to stop it. And the very least it can do is protect people and be a neutral arbiter between citizens instead of being a partisan sectarian actor.
Right. What are communities doing for themselves? If you're in a community where you are vulnerable, that you come under attack every day, that the slightest thing might make somebody accuse you of breaking the blasphemy law, Salim, what do communities do to protect themselves, to maybe reach out to other communities?
Well, this has been unfortunately so much, so many cases have happened in the past that the communities have had to do nothing except that just move from one place to another place. And many times they even had not the possibility to move out of their own colony or out of their own enclave, and then they have been persecuted and killed. And then there are a lot of examples that the Christian communities in the Pakistan, their houses were burned, their colonies were burned, their properties were destroyed, vandalized and all. And then when you come to the, for example, to Hazara community, they are effectively imprisoned inside their own colonies, inside their own enclaves. They cannot move, and they do not know what to do for earning, and and their breadwinners are being killed everywhere if they try to move outside their own localities. And this is such a catastrophic situation that international communities and the World Organization, Human Rights Organization should come forward and should pressurize the government of Pakistan to do something. If not, then the Ahmadiyya community and the Christian community, the Hindus, the Hazara and the Shias at large, all of them, they will be very much marginalized and pushed to the wall, and finally they will be forced to leave, as already they're doing. More than 50,000 Hazaras have already left Pakistan over the last 1 decade, and I'm sure that a lot of thousands of Christians and Ahmadis and have also left Pakistan. And only who can leave Pakistan? Those can leave Pakistan who have a little money to give to the smugglers, or those who have the possibility to make passports and go out. But what about the others, the poor who remain there? And this is very, very unfortunate, which has not been addressed by the government of Pakistan, neither by the state and other organizations.
Salim is absolutely right. So the people that are left in Pakistan now are the most vulnerable people, the people who don't have even the means to educate themselves or to protect themselves. Now, the Ahmadiyya community, we've placed a great deal of emphasis on education, and by the grace of God, we have a 100% literacy rate in Pakistan. We have an active Ahmadiyya Muslims Lawyer Association that helps with asylum cases, that helps with refugee cases, and I want to make clear that we're willing to assist anyone. This is not a religious issue for us, it's a human rights issue. And that's a message I want to give to Pakistan's community, that this is not a religious issue. You don't need to agree with the Hazara or the Christians or the Ahmadis. You don't need to accept their beliefs. But you need to recognize that we are all equal human beings. And as equal human beings, we all deserve these fundamental human rights. And if you need a religious reason, this is the example Prophet Muhammad set forth during his time. He didn't care what someone's faith was. He was willing to respect and protect every single person on the provision that they accepted freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, equality between human beings. And this is all that Ahmadis and Christians and Hazaras and even atheists in Pakistan are asking for right now that they're not getting.
Nika, what's the kind of response we're getting from our community?
Well, you asked for local solutions and what communities are doing amongst themselves. I saw this tweet online. This is one example of something that happened in Multan earlier around Christmas time. I am Shia, this person writes, I love Sunnis. I respect all religions. Shia students wishing Christmas to Christians of Pakistan. And they included a picture of Shias giving gifts to Christians in Multan.
Right, I'm just checking Kasim's Twitter stream right now. What have you been getting over the last 40 minutes or so, Kasim?
I've been getting everything from a denial that persecution is even happening. And it goes back to what Ali Dayan Hassan was mentioning, that some people say that, oh, well, so what if Ahmadis are being killed, Sunnis are also being killed, and it misses the whole point. You don't need to compare two types of murders to think one is worse or one is better. I mean, persecution is persecution.
Right.
You know, murder is murder. It needs to be condemned wherever it rests. Otherwise, you're going to allow it to flourish.
And sometimes they come up with this idea that you should not talk that Shias are being killed, do not talk that Hazaras are being killed, do not talk that these Christians and other minorities are being killed, because this divide the country, this divide the nation. But this is like, if you are dying, die silently.
Yeah.
Don't talk.
Wow.
If you talk, you are dividing the nation.
Gentlemen, this is a good point to end this discussion on. I know it's going to continue online, and unfortunately it's going to remain an issue in Pakistan for some time. So Ali Dayan Hassan, Director of Human Rights Watch for Pakistan, thank you for being part of this conversation. You were just listening to Salim Javeed. He's a human rights activist, and also right here in the studio, Kasim Rashid. It's great to have had you here and be part of the conversation.
It's a privilege.
So, moving on, what we'll be doing on the next programme. Jailed journalists and accusations of a media clampdown. We'll look at the status of press freedom in Egypt. Until then, see you online.